Okay, right, we are going to look at how to use Divi. And in front of us right now we have a page which has been created for me by artificial intelligence. It took only 20 seconds excuse me, for Divi to create it for me, and it's about the weekly activities that take place at Swanham Village Hall. So the image in the background here is something that has been created by AI. It's just imagine what a village hall would look like, so I'm going to change that. And the text here, I'm going to change the text, etc. But it's given me a nice little layout at the very top. And then we've got this area again that it's created for me with a nice title, and then with individual what I call blurbs. I don't know whether you have the concept of blurbs in the other software that you use. I don't know how widespread the word blurb is, but basically a blurb has an icon, it has a title, it has a bit of text, and it can have a few other things as well, and it lives as a single object in its own right on the website. And blurbs are used a lot in just portraying small amounts of information which catch the eye. So in another short video I will look at this area, but today I'm going to be looking at recreating this top area, and as I recreate it you will get hopefully a really good insight into how Divi works. So I'm going to click on Edit with Divi, and the page refreshes, and immediately on the, as you can see, the area where the web page is has shrunk to make room for the menu area on the right hand side, which is a very typical standard layout in so many packages, whether you're using I don't know, Photoshop or GIMP or whatever it is. What happens here is where all of your tools are to create and change what you're working on the main page itself. So we have at the top here page settings, and this title here tells us what the menu is focused on. So, and there are three columns. There is content, design and advanced, and those are your three options, your three tabs that you can click on in order to change what is available on the menu itself. So according to what has been selected, the content of these changes as you click on them. So let me just place my mouse over the actual area, and you can see things begin to highlight and stand out immediately. And we are in a section, and that section has an orange outline to it. Now most sections are normally blue. Let me scroll down a little bit. You can see that's where the orange outline limit is, so the section finishes just there, and you can add a new section by clicking on this plus button. So let me just do that for a moment, and you can see that we have in blue a regular section, a speciality section, which is what this one is because of the orange outline here. You can see the orange lines just there, or a full width section, which you use for typical things like menus and that sort of thing, where the menu goes right across the actual page, etc. But the one you'll use the most is the regular section. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a regular section down here that will go in here, and I'm going to recreate this speciality section as a regular one. Now the reason why I'm going to do that is if I, for example, click on speciality, it shows me that there are some different types of rows. There are green rows and orange rows, and each row can be broken up into columns. So there is a column there are two columns there inside one row area, whereas this orange one here has simply one row and one column to it. and it means that you can have some complex layouts living side by side. Now in Divi 5 I have heard that they're going to ditch this, and you're going to be able to have columns and multiple columns inside, multiple rows with different amounts of columns inside of each other. I don't want to get into that too much because that's going to get too complex, but the reason why I'm going to be recreating the above in a regular rather than a speciality is because I think speciality might being dropped off, and the reason why we have a speciality at the moment is because AI has selected it for us when it made this page for me. Okay, so let me explain. I'm going to click on regular, and as soon as I get an actual regular section put in down here, it offers me a variety of rows, and each row has a different number of columns in it. So obviously this is one row, one column, one row, two columns, one row, three columns, etc., and different amounts of columns split up into different ways in order for you to display your information. So I want this one just here because I want to have basically one row across split into two columns, and I can put multiple items inside each column. That'll become clear as I do this. So I'm going to click there, and I've immediately got my new section here in blue, and then I have, as I've asked, for one column, so one row, I need to get my language correct, one section and one row, but two columns. So that row is split up into two. There's your split just there. And we have the ability to drop in objects into each of those columns. So as the objects are dropped in, the row itself will expand downwards to accommodate the objects that are put into it. Right? It's as simple as that. So if we go back up to here, as soon as I click on the gear or put my mouse over there, you can see the word section settings appear just up there. So the actual gear symbol brings about the actual section settings. If I wanted to duplicate a section instantly, I click on that one. If I want to delete it, I click on that one. If I want more options, I click on the three dots menu. So in this instance, I'm going to click on the section settings, and that will immediately change this to say section settings, and all of these will change within here. So this will change as soon as I click on it. So here we go, clicking on that gear symbol, and now you can see we have the page is above, but now we're looking at a section, and we can look at a background to go on that section. So if I click on the background menu, and you can see here we have a color, a gradient, an image, a video, a background pattern, or a background mask. Now let me quickly show you the mask options. They're really quite nice. If I click on mask, I can click on add a background mask. This box here changes according to which item you have selected here. So you select an item here, and this box will change. So it says background color right now. Now it says gradient. Now there's our background image that we've inserted. There isn't a video in it. There aren't any background patterns. But if I add a background mask, that will then go over the top of this area here, of top of the actual image. So if I click to add a background mask, and you can see that there is now a mask on here where there is the ability to see a bit of the page, and it's called a layer blob. So I've got, oops, every time I seem to want to, no, I can't do that. I'm using this pen here, but each time I select a mask and get onto this, if I select the pen for it, for some strange reason, it's jumping me back to the background color, so I can't use that pen for the moment. So we have a background mask and different types. So that's the layer blob we're looking at right now. that there is an arc, and that is the arrows, etc. So you can choose whatever type you want. That's honeycomb. What's that one called? Square stripes. And you've got a mask colour just here. And you might say, well, I'm losing a lot of my background image. Well, yes, that might be the case. But you can change the mask colour, not only to a different colour, but once you click on this colour selector just here, oh, by the way, I could click here and it would give me a whole selection of colours that I wanted to, if I wanted to. But actually, if I click on the colour itself, we have an opacity or transparency. And if I click and drag that down, that slowly brings that back again. So you can actually make quite a statement if you wish to with that. And I really like that. That's really excellent. And, you know, I would, if I was using a background mask like that, I would have it probably something like that. And then I would put a shadow underneath each of these objects here so that all the text is shadowed properly, etc. And the button had a shadow to make it stand out. So that's how a background mask works. You can get rid of something just by hovering your mouse and clicking the bin. Again, you can have a pattern. So I've clicked on the pattern option, click on add a background pattern, and we can see that there are dots have now appeared, polka dots. If I go to the pattern color and I drag that back up, can you see that that's bringing those dots back into view now? I could choose them, I could make them white, I could make them red, I could choose any of those colors, or I could choose, I know the one I really like is that one, and again I could choose that as being, let's choose it as being white. Let's make it semi-transparent like that. It's like, wow, that's really getting some. That's almost invisible. And I could, if I wanted to, actual size, I could do stretch to fill, and that gives me a really nice, completely different usage of the same color pattern. I could use fit, and that would again give me a different one all over again. So once you've actually chosen a pattern, you can actually manipulate it to look quite different according to the pattern size, etc., and where you want the pattern to repeat, etc. So there's all kinds of things that you can do with that. So again, I'm just going to delete that off and get that out of the way, but I just thought I'd show you how the mask and the pattern in particular work. And again, you can have a background image in, and you can have a gradient in there as well on top, where the gradient is darker at one edge, and this has got a gradient because you've actually, do you see how these are just grey and white? It means there's nothing in there, but because these are blue, it does mean that this background is made up of three different things. Actually, it doesn't have a colour in, but it does have a gradient in. It's made up of two different things. If I click on here and I slightly darken that, that's one end of the gradient. If I click on this one here and I slightly lighten that, can you see how it's darker at the top and lighter at the bottom? Because there is a gradient, and the gradient is linear. If I make it elliptical, you can see that it's darker in the middle now and lighter around the outside, because this gradient color fits on top of the actual image here. If I was to get rid of the gradient altogether, it becomes really stark. Okay, so the reason why we add gradients sometimes is to take the starkness off the very sharp, bright image that's behind us. Let me just do a Control-Z and undo that, so you can see the image back again. So depending on how you want the actual gradient to appear, and you get gradient directions and where you want to start the gradient from, etc. So there's all kinds of different ways in which you can make these gradients work. So that's a bit about the background. So we're going to add in a background, but it's not going to be this AI generated image. We're going to go down to here. I'm going to go to this section, click on there, and now this section, I'm going to give this section a name. I'm going to go to the admin label here, and I'm going to call it, I don't know, weekly activities header. And I'll show you later on why I've given it that name. So that this section settings now has a name called weekly activities header. And I'm going to go to its background, and I'm going to go to background image. And I'm going to add a background image. And the image I'm going to add is from here. It's this one here, Swanham Village Hall front. It's 1920 pixels wide, which is the width of my screen here. So I'm going to add that in. That's the image that I've prepared for this page. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to right mouse click on the actual folder title here in Windows. I'm going to choose copy address as text. So that goes into the computer's memory. So the address of this folder is now in the computer's memory. And on here, on add background image, I'm now going to click, and that will take me to my media library. And I'm going to click on upload files and then select files. This takes me to the last folder I was in, so I'm going to do a Control V on my keyboard, and I'm going to paste in the address of where that file was, and I'm going to click on open. And that takes me straight to that folder I was looking at a few moments ago. Obviously I could have browsed through Windows to find this folder. I could have used the menu here, but I haven't. I've actually copied and pasted that in. So that is the image I wanted, the 1920 image number 2 version. So I'm going to click open, and that pulls it straight into WordPress, which will take a few seconds to do because I'm running off Wi-Fi. I'm not running off a Cat5 cable. Right, so there's the title there. I'm going to Control X to cut that out, or I can do a right mouse click and cut that out. Control V or right mouse click and paste to put that in again. So Swanham Village Hall front. I'm just going to copy that from the alt and put that into the description. This is just going to help me when I finally do a submission to Google. The more information you have about your images, the fact that it's got the name Swanham Village Hall and that sort of thing, just helps with your listings, etc. On the internet. So click upload an image, and you can see that this large image now is just sitting there squashed between these two small areas that are either side of my single row with 2 columns in it. Okay, so we need to stretch this out at some point, but as we add in objects into here, as we add more and more in, this will increase the depth of each of the column, and the section itself will grow with it, and therefore we will see more of this background. If we don't see enough, I'll show you how to increase the background so we can see all of the image. Right, so we've now got our background in place, and we've got a nice object here. Now you can see that we've got the module settings, the object settings just there. So as soon as I click on the gear symbol, rather than saying page and section, it will now give us the name of the module that is just that will appear just here. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to tell Divi we're now working on that module, and you can see we've got page, section, column, because we're on the same page. We're in a section and we're in a column, and inside that column is a heading, and we are now working with an object called a heading. So that tells us what we're working with. And this heading has some text saying discover your community hub at Swanham Village Hall, which is the text that we're seeing just here. So we're on the content tab, and therefore this is the content. The content is the text that is in there. You can add a link, you could add a background if you wanted to, and an admin label. So I'm not going to do any of those just for the moment because I don't want this video to be too long. We're already 20 minutes into the video as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how this heading here, how it's designed, and that will tell us that in the design tab. So when I click on the design tab and I'm going to the name heading text, as soon as I open up that, it tells me it's a heading 1. It tells me the font, which is Playfair Display. It says the weight is regular rather than bold or semi-bold or ultra bold. You can see thin, ultra light, light, regular, medium, semi-bold, bold, ultra bold, or heavy. You know, I could change. If I went to thin, you can just see it change slightly or quite a lot from as I move each one. So we can see that there's nothing forced as far as capitals is concerned or italics. The alignment is naturally left. Obviously I could change the alignment if I wanted to just by clicking on each of those. I could change the colors, etc. But its size it's 72 pixels. I could change that to be a percentage or VW. I can't quite remember what VW stands for, but it's a way of when you change the size and shape of your page to fit either an ultra wide screen or a widescreen, desktop, tablet with a wide or portrait orientated, or landscape or portraited phone. If you have it as a percentage, or if you have it as, I can't remember what, I keep on thinking of Volkswagen when I see VW, but it's not that. But anyway, in Divi 5, you can actually use multiples of these in order to get just exactly the right size, so that as you change the shape of your page, let me just do that for a moment. This is what it would look like on a tablet. This is what it would look like on a tablet in a portrait orientation, phone, and a phone. And as you can see, this is getting smaller and smaller. And if we used a percentage rather than a fixed pixeled size, the actual size, which is more pleasing for a title, would be a little bit better. Okay, so your actual desktop is the default size. So it's got a size of 72. It's got a line height of 1.15, and there's no shadow. And if I put a shadow on, you'd get a load more options appearing underneath naturally about how that shadow would be, etc. But I'm not going to complicate things too much at this moment in time. So I want to recreate that to discover your community hub at Swanham Village Hall. Now, if I wanted to, I could just simply do a right mouse click on that gear symbol and do a copy module, and then I could come down here and I could do a right mouse click. Actually no, I can't. I've got to insert a module. Let me just insert a heading here. The heading is down there, and it gives me a little heading title here, which I will use in a moment. But what I could do is I could now right mouse click on there and I could choose paste module, and there I've got exactly the same module that was up above there down here. Okay, but I want to make this from scratch, so I'm going to delete that and I'm going to work on this one here. Click on the gear symbol. It's got your title goes here, and I'm just going to put actually I'm going to put weekly activities at Swanham Village Hall. It's actually the same title that I've got down here, so I'm going to actually delete that later on. But I've got that title now here. It's still hard to see, so I'm going to go on to design, I'm going to go on to heading text, and I'm going to make it white. and I'm going to go and choose a heading font. Now the font that I've got for this particular website is Abril Fatface, so I'm going to click on that, and you can see that's the actual style that's actually there. That's what I'm using. And the size is at the moment 30 pixels. I'm going to click on the PX and change that to a percentage. And you can see that's gone really, really small because it's 30%. So I'm going to make that 80%. Come on. Okay, rather than percentage, I'm going to put, let's put that back down to 30. I'm going to choose the VW, and I'm going to put down as 5 VW. And you can see that it's quite large there. So that's enough for me, 5 VW. And as I change the size, and now what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to put a small shadow underneath that. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to click on the T here. And you can see that it's added a nice little shadow. I'm going to just take the shadow off and put it on again. It just helps it stand out that little bit more. And if I now click on, I don't know, a mobile phone, can you see it's quite small again? If I just increase the VW like that, you can see that that's nice and large now. And you can see that this, this row has changed so that rather than being 2 columns side by side, it is now 1 column under the other. Can you see? So if I go back to here, there's the object, there's the plus sign to add in the new object. So we've got 2 columns here. But if I go onto the mobile phone view, I've now got 1 object on top of the other. That's where the actual plus 1 is. This is how it will change itself for the mobile phone orientation. Anyway, I'm going to put this back onto the desktop view. And I know time is going by. We're already 27 minutes into this, so taking a lot longer than I expected. So that's the title in place. I'm going to add now this text into place as well. So I could simply just click on the plus symbol here again. I could type in the word text, and there's it's now filtered through all my objects. I click on the word text, and it adds in here just some text that is, I don't know, just template text. Your content goes here. So I could say, look at the weekly activities that take place at Swanland. You know, you can never type properly when you know you're being watched by somebody, you know. Anyway, so that's the text in place. So I'm going to go to the design option now. I'm going to go to text, not heading text, because it's not a heading, it's just normal text. I'm going to make it white. I'm going to make it 16 pixels in size. I am going to change the default to what's called Poppins. That's just another type of font that's there. And I'm going to give it a shadow. It's still not standing out too much because of the white here. So I'm going to put over this background here, I'm going to put another layer where there'll be that gradient, a grey gradient, to make these two things stand out that little bit more over and above the background image we have here. But anyway, I've got now that in place, and we've got the Explore Activities button. So I'm going to again go to the plus symbol here, or the Add New Module here, and I'm going to click, and the word button is just there, and it adds in a click here button for me. So the original text was Explore Activities, so I'm going to change this text here by changing this text here. So Explore Activities, again it's just a default button, so I'm going to go to Design, and I'm going to go to button, and I'm going to use custom styles for button. As soon as I click on this option here, it's going to open up for me a whole series of extra menu options just here. So there we go. And you've got a button background, you've got a button border. Now this one here had a white background with a dark blue kind of text within it and small text. So I'm going to go to button background, and it works in exactly the same way. So I'm going to add a white background to that button, and I'm going to go to button border, and at this moment in time we have a border style of 3 pixels. And what this means is that it's talking about the very edges of the button here. Do you see how there's a slight little, it's not a square, but it's got a little edge to it, a little curve to it. If I go back up to here, you can see there are quite strong curves to this one. So if I now increase this, you can see that curve come in to the edges there, so it makes it look like a really nice button. So that's the actual border. I'm going to give it 20 to make it nicely round. Now you can see that this does have a blue line around it, and that's because we have a border width here. I'm going to put that down to 0, and that naturally disappears because this one here is also set at 0. We don't actually need it. So, and we want to change the text now on that button. So if I go back up and I click on the button border, that gets rid of the button border menu out of the way, and I open up the button text, and it's on regular, so I'm going to choose regular was the actual font weight. I'm going to choose the actual font, and I'm going to choose Poppins again, and I'm going to make the font much smaller, and as I shrink that down, that actually shrinks the button down with it. What I can then do is I can add an icon. If you look here, I place the button over it. You see a little icon appears on the right hand side just there. That means that an icon appears on mouse over it. It's a really nice little option. So, and actually it's set by default for that to happen. And so the button icon, only show icon on hover for button. If I take that off, you see it naturally appears like that. So if I click it on and off, so I'll keep it like that. Right, okay, so the button text, let me go back onto there and look at button text again. Button text color. If I click on black, it's going to go black. That one had a dark blue to it, so what I can do is I can click on the blue here, and I can click on the actual color, and if I wanted to, I could click and drag. You see, if I drag this around, if you go and look on the button itself, you can change the color of the button. If I take it lower down, it becomes darker, and like that, etc. And again, I can just drop the button text size a little bit more down to there. I know it's not a complete copy. If I wanted to, I could just simply do a right mouse click on that object and do copy attributes. And then I could come back down to here, go back, hover my mouse over this object and do a right mouse click. And I could do paste attributes and button design attributes. If I click on that, suddenly my button becomes the same as that one up there. Okay, so if I was struggling to recreate exactly that, which I was, I mean, I didn't look at all the details of that button before trying to recreate it. So I've now got 3 objects in here, and as I've added them in, the area has stretched to fulfill them, and therefore I can see more now of the background image as well. So I now need to recreate this little thing just here. My first thing to do, therefore, can you see how that we've got gaps between here and gaps between here? So there's kind of a little bit of a border between those. So we need to put those gaps, those areas in. So here is my row. I'm going to click on row settings again, because at this moment in time we are looking at a button on the right hand side, and we can either click here on row settings, or I can click here on row, and that takes us to exactly the same place. Okay, we're now looking at this row just here. So remember, we have a single row and 2 columns. Okay, so these objects here are all inside this column here. All right, and this column here is this column here, and it has no objects in it yet. All right, so we've clicked on row, which is this one here, and we're looking at, therefore, all the options to do with that row, and that row has 2 columns, one here, one here, one here, and one here. So if I now click on the gear symbol, I now look at I'm now looking at the column, and you can see this has changed back to page, section, row, column, and there's a little arrow there that to say go back to the row. If I click back onto there, I can see I'm at my row again, and these are my 2 columns again. If I click on this column, I want to see all of the options that I can do with this column here. So this column, which is now this one here, needs to have a background. So I'm going to click on white, and I'm going to give it a white background colour. So just as this has a white background colour, so one of my columns is see-through, and one of my columns now has a background colour. And if you remember, this had just a small amount of curvature around its edges. This has got square, so we need to go to the design, and we need to go to the border just here. And if you remember, as we click and add and click and add and click and add, it's now giving it a nice little rounded edge to the border just there. Okay, so we have here a module, some text, and I'm just going to click on that module settings. So we're going to jump on this side from looking at this column to looking at this object just simply by clicking. So now we've jumped to looking at this object here, and it's a heading object. So this is a heading, it's not just text, it's a heading, and it's got in unite, engage, enjoy in there. Looking at its design, this heading text, it's called heading 4, and it's Source Sans Pro. It's regular, and it's got a specific colour. I'm going to click on that, and that's the colour just there. So I'm going to highlight it with the mouse, or I can triple click to get the whole thing, and I can right mouse click while it's highlighted and click copy. But actually, I don't want to copy the actual attributes. I'm just going to do a Control-C and copy that bit of code, that colour, into there, into the computer's memory, just so that I've got the colour of this text in there. Right, so I'm going to go down to here. I'm going to click on the Add a New Module, and I'm going to add a heading. So HEAD, a heading, and it's got your title goes here. The first thing I'm going to do before I do anything is I'm going to change the colour of that text. So design, heading text, there's the colour object for it. I'm going to paste, and then I'm going to click the plus sign, and that gives me your title goes here. All right, it's a heading 4 title, and I can't quite remember what it was, but I could go in here and I could actually choose the different font, etc. I could choose all those things that I wanted to, But what I'm going to do, just to save time because this is already going on for ages, I'm going to right mouse click on there, choose copy attributes. I'm going to go back down to here. I'm going to right mouse click on here. And I'm going to go to paste attributes and paste the design. So it just goes on from there. So in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this module. Do you see how we've got these three options here, and one of them is duplicate. So I'm just going to duplicate that module. So I've got it twice. And if I put my mouse over it, you can see that it's like that four-way arrow that appears. Let me just put my mouse back there. That means I can drag it. So I'm going to click that. Oops, hold a second. Click it and drag. And can you see how it's actually saying, where do you want to drop it? Where do you want to drop this duplicated unite, engage, enjoy? I'm going to take it down, down, down. I'm just going to drop it here. This is just going to save me some time. So I'm going to delete that one off. And I'm going to do the same with this one here as well. Okay, just to save time. I think you've got the idea of how you'd build things up. I'm going to duplicate that one. And I'm going to duplicate that one as well. Now you can see that one of the differences between this one and that one is, as I say, this spacing that's in between them, that's actually around the edges. So we're going to put this spacing into place so that it actually looks quite nice. So I am going to click on the row settings. So having clicked on the row settings, I'm now looking at the row over here, and you can see my two columns. And I'm going to click on the gear symbol on this second column, which is this one here, so I can begin to work on this column again. So I click on that one. And now we are working on that column. There's the word column just there. I'm going to go to design, and I'm going to go to spacing. And in the spacing, rather than pixels, I'm going to choose, so you've got top and bottom, left and right, okay? So there's the top, there's the bottom, there's the left, there's the right. You've got this, this drag sort of bar. If I drag that, can you see how that's, the padding is to do with the area on the very edge here, okay? To do with this area at the very edge. So that's what the padding is to do with. Margin is different. If I was to increase this margin like that, can you see how the whole object moves? Because the margin is outside the object. So you've got margin top, margin bottom, top and bottom, margin to the right and margin to the left. All these ones here, top, bottom, left, right, where I've actually highlighted, that's where that works. With padding, it works on the inside of the object, and it will create spaces on the inside of the object for top, bottom, left and right. And if we go back up to here, we can see it's the padding that we want to alter. So we move all of the text inside so there is greater space. So you can, if you wish to, let me just put that margin back to 0. You can, if you wish to, just use this little bar here to add top and bottom, etc., and left and right, and you can drag these and you can make your own thing that way, and it's quite nice just to work on these little things just here. However, these are to do with pixels, and I prefer to work with percentages, because when you change the shape of the device, it works on a percentage according to the actual device that's actually the shape that's changed, and it can be a little bit more accurate in retaining its shape. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this all back to 0, and I'm going to do the top and bottom first of all, and I'm going to change it to a percentage, and I'm going to link the two. Okay, so that the top and bottom are now linked. So what I change at the top also changes at the bottom. So if I make it 1%, it's 1% for both top and bottom. You can see in the padding there. If I make it 2%, it's now 2%. I'm going to do the same with the left and right. I'm going to make them percentage, and I'm going to do 2%. And you can see for top and bottom there is now an equal padding all the way around, which looks really nice. So that's how I have recreated that top area down here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete this top one, and that gives me a new top space. Now it's a bit stark, so as I said, I'm going to click on the settings for the whole of this section, which is where the background image is, if you remember. But I'm going to choose to add a background gradient. And the gradient, I'm going to choose a black colour for both of them. And I'm going to, at the moment you can't see the gradient actually in place. I'll show you how you add that in a moment. But I'm going to make the first one like this at a lighter grey. That's the first part of the gradient. The second one I'm going to make it a really light one. Okay. Place gradient above background image. Bang, like that. Can you see that goes on? So that's now there. And the gradient direction, if I can change where the direction is. Can you see that? At the moment if I put it across there, it's kind of on the actual left hand side, and it's a gradient going from left to right. Okay, now I can here's the gradient starting colour over here, which is the starting colour over here. If I click on that one there, so that this becomes live. So I've clicked on this here, which represents this here, but by clicking on this here, this jumps in and says this now represents this. If I click on this side, it now represents here, which represents what's happening on this side of the gradient. Okay, so if I click on each one, you see that jump because I'm working on a different side. So I'll click on here, I'm now working on this side, click here, and I'm going to make that gradient a little bit darker. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to drag this way, down this line, and that means I'm going to drag the actual darkness of the colour across this way as well. Okay, so as I do that, it means more of this side is actually put into darkness. Can you see how that's where the darkness line is right now? You watch as I drag this further right, how that darkness moves right the way across. Can you see? Yeah. Okay. So that just helps that bit of text stand out that little bit more. I don't need to do it on this side simply because I've put a nice white background just there. However, if I wanted to see a bit more of the village hall, what I could do is I could click on the row settings. So I'm now working on the row, not the background. Click on the row settings again. Again, this is changed on the right hand side. I'm now looking at the row, and I'm going to click on this column here, settings here. So I'm now working on this column here within that single row. So click on that column settings there. Go to background. Here is the background color, the white color. I'm going to click on there, and I'm going to drag this opacity down so that I can see that little bit of the hall behind it as well. And that just makes it look really, really nice, because I can actually still read the text really easily and really well. And at the same time, I can see that little bit more of the image. So I'm going to click save. And that has been me working on that top area. Now I've still got work to do. I've still got work to do because I've got all these different shapes that that can be viewed. And remember, most websites now are viewed by mobile phone. So I'm going to click on the tablet view. Am I happy with that? Yeah, that's pretty okay. The tablet, not just in landscape, but in portrait. Is that looking good? Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. Perhaps I want this join our community today. Click on that, and I want to make that a little bit larger, perhaps. So I'm going to go to the design option. I'm going to go to, now that's a heading, isn't it? So heading text, and it's 22 pixels. I'm going to make that 20, I'm going to make that 30. So just for the tablet portrait, I've changed the actual text size for that, and it will remember only to change that. Okay, if I go back to the desktop view, it's still retained its other size. If I click again on this here, and I go to design, it's 32 heading text size when on the desktop view. When on the tablet view, that same text is 30. Do you see? Now if I want to go to phone view, that's a good size. If I want to go to phone view in portrait, again, that's a little bit small. So I'm going to click on there, go to design, and it's set at 17. So I'm going to make that 24. So as I click on each of these, you'll see the actual text is a different size according to the type of view that I have, and that's fine. So it would be a matter of, once you've got that in place, just clicking on each one of these, seeing how it looks, and making sure that you could change the text according to the shape of the device that's actually viewing it. Okay, so that is 51 minutes. I was expecting this just to be like a 10-minute thing, but it's actually taken an awful lot longer than that. So hopefully that's given you an idea as to how Divi works. And it's just a matter of getting your head around whatever you've clicked on here, the actual menu items appear for it just here. So hopefully you might need to watch this a few times in order to get your head around that. Once you've opened up a series of menus, to close it up, at the moment heading text, you see, I've opened that. If I click on that, it just closes it up, and you can open up each section, each set of options. Oh yeah, let me just do this really quickly. We have an animation option, and you can animate any object. You can animate a column if you wanted to, or a row. So let me just animate this column here. Okay, this white column that exists within this row. So at this moment in time, I'm looking at a heading, but I don't want it to do that. I'm going to click on row, and then I'm going to click on column, which is this column just here. So now I'm working on that column, and there you can see the word column is just there. I'm going to go to design and animation, and I want this, I don't know, to flip in, perhaps flip or fold, fade, slide. And once you've actually chosen a type, you can then, if I said I wanted it to slide, for example, I can then scroll down here, and where did I want it to slide from? I can make it slide from the left, to slide to the left, or slide to the right, or slide down towards the bottom, etc. But actually, I want it just to flip up like that. And the animation duration is 1000 milliseconds. So if I wanted to slow it down, I could make it 3000. And you see it's far slower. Or I can want it to be quicker, make it 500. And it's really quick. So, but we'll keep it at 1000. And do we want it to delay when the actual web page first appears? Do we want a delay? Shall I put in a 500 millisecond delay? So that when the web page appears, you see the other things first, and then that just appears as a point of emphasis. So if I wanted to emphasize, I'll put a delay on. So when the web page loads, you see that first, and then that appears as a point of emphasis. That's why you put a delay in. I'm not going to go into the other ones about opacity and that sort of thing, but I'm just saying we can add an animation that easily. So when I click save, and if I exit this page, you'll see that comes in under a delay, and the whole lot is animated because it's stuck inside that column, which is part of this row. And because I've animated the column, everything in the column doesn't appear until the column itself appears. And that's a really nice touch. So hopefully that has given you a bit of an insight into how Divi works. and I'll show you more later on, but that should be enough, as it's nearly 55 minutes now for you to look at and just perhaps watch that a few times over, or focus on a few bits that I'm talking about, cut out the waffle or whatever it is, or have your own experiment with it if you want to get. I don't know whether you can get a version of Divi where you can go onto the Divi website and have a little play around for free. I don't know. You might be able to. You could use AI, ChatGPT or Perplexity AI, to ask that question: is there anywhere on the internet where I can practice on Divi for free? And there probably is. So, and ChatGPT or Perplexity AI would give you that option. Okay, I'll turn this into a video. I'll put it up onto YouTube and then I'll send you the link. Okay.